Hello, I'm Juliet Mann, and this is the Agenda podcast, CGTN Europe's one-stop shop for smart, in-depth discussion of the issues that really matter in the world today. As artificial intelligence spreads into almost every aspect of our lives, concerns over its regulation are becoming increasingly acute. This week, the EU signalled a potential delay to key enforcement deadlines of its landmark AI Act, which some see as a victory for tech giants in the battle for stricter regulation. So where is the world of AI and its regulation heading? Joining me now, Virginia Dignum, a professor in responsible artificial intelligence, a member of the UN high-level advisory body on AI. Fabian Westerheide, CEO at Rise of AI, and Qiaochu Zhang, Max Weber Fellow at the European University Institute. Thanks all of you for coming on the agenda. Virginia, let me start with you, because the EU's AI Act had been seen as perhaps the world leader in AI regulation. Is that changing?
I would say that the EU remains the only region which has a comprehensive binding AI framework on the books. So in that sense, it's still a reference point. But of course, with the proposed changes in the digital omnibus, we need to think about rethink the nature of leadership. If by leadership we think that it's about meaning protecting people and democracy, then watering down the safeguards as proposed, the risks undermining that claim, and then leadership is probably far from what we would call. But if we talk about leadership being about following and providing some regulatory lightness in name of competitiveness, maybe then we can. So it will depend a lot in which way we are talking about the leadership of Europe on the area. But indeed, things are different now with the watering down of the proposed watering down than what was until now.
I mean, Fabian, would you agree with that assessment, or do you see the EU maybe as caving in to the demands of big tech and of other nations?
It's something in between. So first, the United States regulated first under Obama. Second, China has one of the heaviest regulation for AI companies out there. And Europe tried just to come up with their own framework. The problem is that the framework, the AI EU Act, is not a good law, and we in Europe complained about this for years now. So maybe the Americans put pressure on this, but the complaints are the same. And the EU Act has to be changed to be fostering more European ecosystem, European companies, but it should not be changed to make it Americans easier to do business here.
Qiaochu, the EU has termed this latest approach as a digital omnibus designed to simplify Europe's tech laws. Is that really what it is?
I would say on the surface, yes. So the idea is to streamline Europe tech laws and also to get rid of potential regulation overlaps or contradictories. So it shows that the EU is working to make its regulatory system easier to navigate and management. But I would also say that it's part of the story. So we need to look closely to the concept of what simplification means. So it could end up as a kind of a polite way of saying we need fewer protection, and it could be a step towards rolling back some regulations or rules. Some of the proposed changes actually are touching on very sensitive and important issue areas, such as how our personal data is managed, how tracking cookies are used, and how strict the EU AI Act remains. So where it's framed as a concept tied up, what really matters and what really need to be seen is what actually gets changed.
Virginia, let's dig in a little bit more to pressure that may or may not have come from other places, from the US government, from big tech companies like Meta, like Alphabet. Do you think there has been pressure there in terms of making the space more competitive with less of a focus on the personal data and personal protections?
Yeah, there is clearly intense lobbying and also geopolitical pressure behind this shift, both from large companies but also from governments, which keep talking about the European overregulation. But and that has been well documented. And like Fabian says, it's not just external pressure. In Europe, we also have been for a long time talking about the need for a regulation that it's better designed, better aligned with the needs of companies, but also the needs of the public and the needs of society in general. And what I think it's still concerning is this idea that innovation only can be happening without regulation. This dichotomy, and it is a false dichotomy. And innovation, of course, too much regulation is good for no one. But on the other hand, no one wants to operate in a fully deregulated world. Innovation needs to have some clear basis in regulation, some clear agreements on what is the direction to go. Otherwise, we are undermining our own companies and our own innovation and research within Europe and opening the doors for anything goes without having any control anymore. So it's not, there is a lot of lobbying, internal and external, but I would like to see it much less this dichotomy between we can only have regulation, innovation without regulation, because that I think is definitely not the direction in which we need to go.
I can see everybody nodding along to all of that. I mean, Fabian, there is this balance, isn't there, between regulation and innovation? I mean, how worried should we be if innovation is allowed to flourish unchecked?
The thing is, there's regulation, and Europe tends to do over-regulate, to make it too perfect, too strict, too strong before something grows. So now we get the pressure from the hyperscalers and from big tech, and Europe should answer first, oh, we're losing this because we're highly dependent on American technology. And second, we should build our own technology and infrastructure. So there should be more wake up, like, hey, we have to give in to this pressure because we need them, but we should incentivize our economy and our governments to use more European solutions. So we don't have this pressure in future anymore, that we at least gain a little bit of power back slowly. But if we never start this pressure will just increase.
So interesting, you're talking about European rules for European, or European solutions for European countries. Qiaochu, what do you think? Do you see the role of big tech being treated differently in Europe, in the US, in China? Let's compare it.
Yes, that makes totally sense to me about like the different tech companies are treated differently in different national contexts. And in Europe, we can see that tech companies are operating under strict rules, especially surrounding data protection, risk assessment, and also about the transparency and accountability requirements. So actually, from my understanding, is that EU is following a right-based approach, which means the people's rights or people's well-beings and the fairness of the market should be prioritized from the starting point. And when we look at the US approaches, it's more hands-off and it's more driven by innovation. So the idea is that technology and the market growth should come first, and the government only step in when the problems become too obvious to ignore. And in the China case, I would say tech companies and the government are operating in a strategic partnership. So the state provides supportive policy to drive innovation and to boost the growth of companies. And at the same time, it's also imposed very strict and firm regulation to guide the company's behaviors. So when we look at how the AI policy are formulated in China, so the role of the government is to set up the overall guidance or the overall direction about how AI should regulate. But at the same time, we can see that tech companies are placing a kind of increasingly active role in kind of shaping the discussion surrounding the governance of AI in China.
Fabian, what do you think are the pros and cons then when it comes to AI regulation in different territories? So
when it's about choosing where I want to live in Europe. I like it. I like that we're human and people first approach. And in the US, it's not about innovation, it's about power and capital. So we don't understand, and China, by the way, it's also about power, less capital. So both countries use AI as a strategic tool, and Europe is not. And so we are in a position of weakness, and I'm just frustrated about this. So I always say we can learn from both. We can learn from China how government can cooperate with industry to make guidelines, and we can learn from the Americans how a little bit less regulation in the early stage time for startups, etc., gives time to grow. So I think we should just know they are ahead of us, and we have to learn from them, and we should not have the moral priority to emphasize our values about everyone. With Europe thought they can do it, and they're lost. So they lost the bet that they are the highest moral grand standard, because if you have nothing to protect, you shouldn't protect it. So I say we learn from both ecosystems and countries.
Qiaochu, I want to dig in a little bit more to what China is doing. They've got this interim AI measures for generative AI services. What's unique about that approach?
Yeah, I totally agree with Fabian said about we need to learn between different national regulation, and also in China's case, I have to say China see the innovation and regulation as interconnected rather than opposites. So China treats the development of AI technology as also an essential part of the governance itself. So for China, AI regulation isn't just about imposing restrictions or setting limitation. It is also about how to promote development of AI technology in a responsible and sustainable way. And moreover, I would also note that China in recent days has placed increasingly emphasis on the security and ethical risk associated with development of AI technology. And its recent rules highlight some ethical issues such as privacy, data protection, and also the centrality of humans in terms of use and also developing this AI-enabled system. While there are differences between China, EU, and the US, we can see there's also convergence between kind of this country in terms of their emphasis on the responsibility of human beings, and also it's necessary to address security risks arising from AI development.
Virginia, with the use of generative AI increasing almost daily, I'm wondering if there's a need here for a global approach to regulation. I mean, look, you sit on the UN's advisory body on AI. I mean, is this a role that body is looking to undertake?
So there is definitely a need for global coordination. I don't think that we need a global super regulator, which goes to regulate over everybody else. The United Nations advisory body, it finished already. So we did our advice 1 year ago, and now the United Nations is taking over. So my role there is, it's not existing at the moment. But what I see, and that I'm very happy to see that the United Nations in the last General Assembly has approved some of the proposals that we made last year, a proposal for a panel, an international scientific panel that is going to keep track of what's happening in different regions, what's work, what doesn't work, and really support the work of the second part of the what has been approved, which is a global dialogue on AI in which different parties, different stakeholders are going to sit together and really work on global coordination. At no way there is the idea to go and regulate over everybody else, but really support the coordination. And like Qiaochu just said, learning from each other, and Fabian said the same as well, really providing a platform in which we all, not only United States, China and Europe, but everybody, and especially taking into account the specificities of the global south, of the global majority, really sitting together and learning from each other, coordinating our approaches, but not super regulating and creating another layer of regulation.
You're right, Fabian did mention that people should learn from each other, but I wonder, Fabian, it isn't maybe the only way to build genuine trust in AI methods of the future going to be through a global network, a global scheme?
So, long answer, yes. We need one government, one regulation. Only then we can have a world of peace. However, we have competing nations. It's the American system, it's the Chinese system, number 2 and number 1, clearly. And then Europe and the rest of the world in relevance. And if China and US are still competing, there will never be a global regulation because they compete for interest, for resources, for influence. If they unite one day, then we have world peace and then we have world regulation, one taxation system. But as long as you can choose between them and there's rivalry, competition will not allow it. It always will look for the market, which is a little bit softer, for the industry to grow.
Qiaochu, cooperation is much discussed at a global level, but harder to put into practice. What would you say that the key stumbling blocks might be to a global approach to AI, beyond what Fabian's already been talking about?
Yeah, I totally agree with Fabian said about different countries are from different places and also take different approaches because of the kind of competition issues. And for me, it's actually the main challenges faced by the international community to formulate a global approach to AI governance, because different countries have different political systems, different cultures, different stages of economic development, as well as their level of technology capacity. So this naturally leads to different priorities and different objectives, like when they formulate their own AI regulations. For instance, we can see there's a divide between the global north and global south countries, where the global north countries are more advanced in AI development and more influential in terms of shaping the global AI governance framework. For the global south countries, they tend to occupy the relatively low end of the global supply chain. And while they are impacted significantly by AI development, they actually face limitation to become influential actors in setting up the agenda in global AI governance. So with such variations or difference in mind, it's quite hard for us to establish a kind of universal global framework in AI governance.
So it's going to be hard to find a one-size-fits-all. But Virginia, I wonder if maybe there should be different rules when it comes to different kinds of AI use, because AI insecurity and financial systems pose very different problems for, say, entertainment.
Yes, you are right on the different problems, and a one-size-fits-all. In that, I think I disagree a little bit with what Fabian says. I don't think that a one-size-fits-all or a one unique regulation is what we really need. There are many differences, not only in terms of the stage of development of AI, but also on different cultures, different approach, different values. So I would say that what we do need to do is to take a much more people-centered, fundamental rights grounded approach. What really matters is what we need to regulate. And it's not a matter of risk. Low risk uses might, in some cases and for some people, be of very high risk. So I'm not really sure whether risk is the way to distinguish, but to really fundamentally look at what really matters for people, for society, for the environment, and take that as the basis in which we all agree that we need to regulate and to take care of. And how we are going to do it, it can be different. We still don't really agree on the sockets, the electricity sockets that we use around the world, but we do agree that electricity needs to be taken into within some types of safety limits. So let's look at what is the matters from a perspective of human rights, of the people and the societies and the environment in which we all are living together.
It sounds like, Fabian, a starting point might be more partnerships, might be collaborations to ensure the conversations keep going across territories and to ensure that over-regulation doesn't stifle that all-important innovation.
I agree with Virginia. I would love to have, in the perfect world, a human-centric, value-based approach. But the truth is, power is currently winning, and currently it is that American, ChatGPT, etc., will dominate our culture, our language, and therefore emphasis we need localized generative AI. I need European and German and French trained models who speak French, who think French, and who are preserving the culture and the language, because language is the key to transmit what we really believe.
Of course, one of the exciting technologies that there's a buzz about is instant translation, which means you wouldn't need to learn all of the languages that you're saying are so important. Qiaochu, what do you think? And where do you think that the innovation needs to come from so that AI can maintain its integrity at the same time as helping economies grow?
Yeah, I think for me, the real innovation doesn't come from a single actor or like single factor. It's actually come from the cooperation across the whole ecosystem at both domestic and international level, including the government, the industry, researcher, as well as the public. So we need effective and smart regulation. We also need economic capital and also human resources and talents in that issue areas. As well as I also would like to suggest that at international level, we also need cooperations and also knowledge sharing between different countries in AI development. So that is also the key point of like narrowing the gap between countries at different development stage. And also we also need to keep the cultural difference in mind. That's also very important. But I feel like the exchanges between people to people and also this kind of knowledge sharing happening between them are quite important if we would like to establish a more inclusive and equitable AI governance system.
Virginia, the AI Act took so long to negotiate. Now we've got bits of it that are being put on pause. I wonder, what's your outlook? Where do you see the future of AI regulation going? Or are they going to keep kicking the can down the road?
Indeed, you are completely right. I think the main problem with the AI Act is the overcooking of it. It was we took too long, and it is too much. It past its own date of or usefulness, maybe. But anyway, talking about the future, I see that we need to look in 3 different directions or 3 different aspects which we need to talk together. The first one is that we need to move from focusing on regulating individual applications, individual technologies, but really looking at the governing the systems and the infrastructures, understanding that AI is not just a technology, it's a social technical system. It's about much more than just the specific technique or the LLM or the ChatGPT or whatever else. It's much better. It's much broader. So it's a system of systems, and we need to regulate that. And this regulation needs, by definition, to be a hybrid of many different things. It's not just about hard law. It's also about technical standards. It's about the audit ecosystems, is about a meaningful participation for civil society, and it's not just about the self-assessment and the in one end, the self-assessment by companies, or in the other side, the hard law. We need to be a combination of all these things. And finally, maybe the crucial one is that we need to embed AI regulation in broader agendas: democracy, labor rights, sustainability, global justice. If we really lose sight of these issues, and if we lose sight of the human rights, the social justice, the planetary limits, there is no amount of technology and regulation that can make AI truly beneficial for humankind.
Fabian, Virginia gave us a very, very long shopping list there of things that need to happen. We've also been talking about all of the different people with agency, with skin in the game here. I mean, where do you start if we're going to get traction, if we're going to create something that is going to have universal impact?
So I agree to both of you. And I would recommend talk to the people who build AI, who use AI, who apply it. Don't talk only to the researchers because they want to have the ideal version. Talk to those operating, being in real business out there, working with the law at the end. Europe listened a lot to people, but mostly were researchers, like 80% of the high advisory board. And they want a different version than someone who's actually running and coding and programming it. So talk to the people, talk to the ecosystem. And then second, start educating society. Like Finland is doing this heavily. China has one of the biggest programs for professorships and education and universities. Bring this tool, which is a great tool, to the masses. Allow 500 million Europeans to use it aware and self-knowledge about it. When they use ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Manos, they should know what it works, where the data is stored, how the system works. So we should start with education. And then if we have regulation, I want to have regulation which is protecting Europeans, protecting European companies until they're big enough to compete international. And then regulation should only be there to build a protection fence for us against American and Chinese technology until we are ready at least to compete with them.
So to avoid European companies being swallowed up before they're ready. Qiaochu, I'll give the last word to you. What about you? Where do you see AI innovation and regulation heading?
Yeah, I think we already talk about so many things about differences and diversities between different countries and also different cultures. But finally, I would like to suggest that there's also some potential to find a common ground between different countries in the international community. Because AI is, for me, is a new challenge faced by all of the humanity. And as human beings, we share similar concerns about preventing harms caused by AI technology and also preserving human dignities and human agencies in face of this powerful AI-enabled system. So also there's an old Chinese saying I would like to share is about seeking common ground while respecting differences. So I think that really captured the direction we are heading in. So countries may regulate their own AI system in their own ways, but they can still work together and cooperate when their interests and normative understanding overlap. And we are already seeing some promising signs in this regard. We see there are regional initiatives on AI governance from Southeast Asia and also from Africa. And also there are multi-stakeholder platforms involving not only the government, but also industry, representative academics, and also civil society to kind of working to build bridges and to find kind of the consensus, despite we have different assumptions or different positions. So they won't produce a single supranational AI law, but they are working or creating some shared norms and practical cooperations, and that is likely to be the future direction of AI governance.
Qiaochu Zhang, Virginia Dignum, and Fabian Westerheide, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find more agenda content on CGTN Europe's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube channels. Until next time, goodbye.
The most interesting questions.
Are there other living beings beyond Earth?
Will man or machine be in charge?
Great question.
Always have more than one answer.
Well, hold on, let me just draw up a list.
And always come from more than one person.
That's where the credibility lies.
The concept of having a machinery which is alive and evolving didn't wait for us.
The end of inequality of incomes and wealth around the world, can you imagine how difficult that is at the moment to achieve?
Every episode, Stephen Cole, Murray Beveridge, and some of the brightest minds out there shed light on the answers to some of the most intriguing questions.
There are two ways of looking at this.
Machines can't really discriminate between civilian and military targets.
The Answers Project.
Maybe we need to just look at this in a bit more detail.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
The Answers Project, a new podcast from CGTN Europe.